So I guess I'm going to do my own intro. Yeah. Which is perfectly fine for me. I mean, anybody that knows me knows that I really don't need a bio and all of that. So I'm just going to hop right in. Because I always say, I'm Gina Michnowicz, and I am the CEO and CCO of the Craftsman Agency. We focus on creating magical moments for our clients. Is it really loud? Should we tell them to quiet down over there? Yeah. Shh, be quiet. Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bit about storytelling and the power of storytelling and how it can help you scale your brand and really connect with consumers. You cannot hear me? No? Okay. I think they're going to be working on getting that louder. I mean, can you hear? So everybody come down. We can just have a big circle. Can you hear me now? No? This is fun. Okay, I guess we're gonna kind of get everybody to come closer. I'm just gonna start talking about the meaningful brand study for Havas. They do it every year, and it is one of those studies that tells you who are the most valuable brands in the world. It's got a lot of great data points, and there are a lot of things that I love about it, and then there's this one scary statistic. And it keeps getting worse, and that's the really scary part about it. So basically, Theranos, any Marvel fans out there? Just like Theranos can snap fingers and make everyone go away. Where did my slides go? Basically, consumers don't care if 75% of brands disappear. 75%. So that means 75% of you that are working for companies, the consumer doesn't care if you disappear. Does that kind of make you sad? Kind of makes me sad. Makes me sad for the brands I work with. But our job is really to create a moment where brands really do care for you, and then in turn, the consumer cares for the brand, and there is loyalty. And you do that through human connection. And human connection is developed in a lot of different ways. We have so much technology that gives us the ability to retarget and nurture and do all of these things to kind of hit the consumer over the head over and over again. Those technologies are great, and they can really change conversion, but you have to use them with discipline. Because if you don't, then you're losing that connection. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can really develop connection. So everybody knows when you're a brand, you're trying to sell something, a service, a product, whatever it is. And so the fact that we kind of go in knowing that somebody's trying to sell you something doesn't mean that it has to be bad. It can be fun. And one of the things that we've looked at is, how can you effectively advertise? So basically, if you have a human in an ad, 11 times more engagement happens with that ad. So everybody was like, oh my gosh, I gotta put an image in my ad, and it's got to be, it's got to be like something that feels really fun. And these stock images are basically not how we live. They aren't real. They are people like with fists up and taking coffee cups. And do you sit at your computer and smile? Like, is that how you work on a daily basis? It really isn't how I work on a daily basis. So what do those images tell your consumer or the customer? They don't really tell you anything. And I always talk about, like, from a brand perspective, what do you feel? Do you feel something for that brand when you are looking at that ad, you're seeing that piece of content, whatever it is? Well, in the case of those stock images and sort of poor storytelling, you don't feel anything. It doesn't give your brand any benefit. So that's where the power of storytelling comes in. A good story brings the audience along. It really is connecting, and it's getting that point where you're telling your consumer and your customer who you're all about and why they should care. So what is storytelling? Storytelling essentially is having a piece of content that has a beginning, a middle, and an end wrapped in emotion. It's basically like a warm hug, or a laugh, or some form of entertainment. Storytelling at its best is immersive, and it makes you not want to, leave it. You want to stay till the end because you want to understand what is happening. It makes you feel the feels. That can be humor, that laughter, cry. I mean, there are so many good Super Bowl campaigns that literally I am bawling almost. And I love those. So when you think about storytelling, one thing that we might say is, oh my gosh, I want to just talk about myself. Kind of like Kanye here. I love this picture. I've shown it when I talk about social media and I talk about how you need to interact from a brand perspective. It's, yes, you do have to talk about yourself, but you can also a little bit less me, more you. Putting that customer in the middle, this relevant piece of content, and this really giving the person sort of so that they can almost see themselves in the ad. There's some brands that do this really effectively, and I have some great examples. So you go to a cocktail party. I'm going to kind of step back and give you sort of an analogy from a perspective of, you go to a cocktail party. Two people went to Africa. It's a amazing safari experience. And one person tells you where they went, how long they went, and they saw a couple animals. And that's it. And then the next person tells you about their dinner in the bush. They describe to you that experience at that dining room table. And they talk about the flickering candlelight and the chandeliers hanging from the banyan trees. And you can transport yourself into that bush. You can smell the dust. You can hear the fire kind of crackling because they have a fire ring so that the cats don't come eat you. So that's kind of a fun fact. And then you also can see the glistening eyes off in the distance that your friend is telling you about. But you were protected because you had the guards and you had that fire ring. And then they tell you about the wine and you can almost taste it. That is a great storyteller. And what do you want to do? You want to go to Africa. And you want to go right now, and you want to book your ticket because you want that once-in-a-lifetime experience. So if you transport that to being a brand and telling a story, you can actually have that same effect. So if you think about the 5 principles of storytelling for a brand, you have to be true to your voice. It doesn't matter who's telling your story. Maybe you have a creator, you have someone that you're working with that is telling that story. And in that case, that creator still needs to be in their voice, but they cannot depart too much from the brand. We just talk about don't do harm for the brand. You never want to do harm, right? You want to tell diverse stories. There are probably a lot of segments that you're not tapping into. So diversity, everybody talks about diversity and inclusion because it's important. And we need to break systemic racism. And we need to support and make everyone feel like they are part of the story. And brands are responsible and can contribute to that. So if we think about that, that also opens up sometimes segments that you never thought about. And you get to tell a story for them. And then in the case also of taking risks, so I tell this story of, we had a client and we were talking and I was telling him why we needed to do this online game and that it was a really effective way to kind of bring storytelling in. And he went to the web team and he was really excited about it. And the web team goes, we don't build games. We're a tech company. we don't do that. We tried it. It didn't work. And he goes, well, my game's better. I know it's going to be better. I can. He's like, okay, so I'm going to build an interactive demo. And that's, and then he said, we're going to build the interactive demo. And he goes, what are they going to do? Fire me for making a game? Probably not. And so that's where risk comes in, sort of that risk reward as a marketer. And applying relevant current trends. This is really hard because you have to have a team that can be agile, that can respond, that can change that story, can weave it in and really figure it out. But that makes it much more effective because it's probably associated with something else that's going on. And that means that you can get further reach. And then you also want to be consistent. But this doesn't mean being the same and rote and going over and over again and saying the same thing. It means mixing it up also between your website, between YouTube, between, so all of your social media channels, TikTok, whatever it is, in-person activations, you want to mix it up, but it needs to still be consistent because you want to pull that person through on that story. Storytelling can be in all shapes and sizes. I mean, sometimes when I talk about storytelling, people are like, oh, it's a book, right? You're just talking about, kind of like a story. I'm not talking about an ebook either. So who in the audience has downloaded an ebook in the last 6 months? Raise your hand. Okay, now, who of you that downloaded the ebook actually read it? Okay, there's a lot less hands. A lot less hands. I can tell you the last 5 ebooks that maybe I did 18 months ago, I still haven't read them. And if I opened it and it just started talking about me, my brand, it's talked about the product and it hit me over the head the minute I opened it, I close it and I delete it because it's not really grabbing me. It's not bringing me through. So storytelling can be all shapes and sizes. It can be games, it can be video, it can be in-person activations, it can be comic strips, it can be comic books, graphic novels, really all different kinds of mediums. You can really pick the medium, just play. It can be art. So these brands up here, I definitely think are some of the best storytellers in the industry. And I'm gonna talk about why they are. So Disney, it's a little bit like, okay, well, Disney creates a lot of content, so, that seems unfair, right? Well, they create a lot of content, but they are super consistent with their characters. It doesn't matter if it's in the park. It doesn't matter if you're in their offices. It doesn't matter if it is in the theatrical environment. Everything is pulled through. It's consistent. So from a Disney perspective, it is truly about consistency and really that brand voice. And they do it very effectively and interestingly across all of the platforms. Spotify also tells stories. They use data in a really interesting way. So I'm sure we've got some Spotify users out here. Are you excited for Wrapped? You're just about to get your Wrapped, basically to hear what you heard over the last year and what were your favorite songs. How fun, because now you get to share it. How brilliant, because you share your playlist and that makes everybody else go to Spotify and listen to more music. That is, in a sense, storytelling. It's just a different form of storytelling, but it is from the customer's point of view. The other thing that Spotify does with data that is so fascinating, I don't know if anybody saw the out-of-home campaign a couple of years ago, where it basically, it took data points on certain users, but not in a creepy way. And my favorite one is this, like, for you that listened to that song 298 times about your broken heart, we hear you. I mean, how many of us have had a broken heart and listened to music over and over again, and how can we relate to that? And Spotify made us all relate. Pixar, also fabulous at storytelling, probably the best. What they do so effectively is they actually tell stories that kids and adults listen to because they weave in that current trend. They weave in all of those kind of current things that are happening that give the adults something interesting to watch and listen to. P&G has really taken over the last few years. Mark Pritchard is a big reason for that. P&G essentially has been taking, for cause, and there's like the video, The Look, which is basically the life in other people's shoes, that they go into stores and you see what people look at them like, and it is a very, very kind of grabs you. It doesn't talk at all about P&G products, but you certainly do know that P&G created it. They do tell good stories about products too, and I have an example of that. And then Nike does a great job of standing for a cause, and they also do a great job of storytelling with that cause. They stood up for Colin Kaepernick. They might have lost some customers initially, but they gained it back tenfold, and the numbers did not lie on that case. Then there was, Play Like a Girl, super powerful empowerment for girls, and that was a really powerful campaign as well, and really got girl athletes, young girl athletes, to feel strong, and that was a great campaign as well. And they just came out with Serena Williams, who just retired, the GOAT, right? I mean, it was a very, very powerful Girl from Compton, and you had chills when it really pulled you all the way through to where she ended up, and just like a couple of weeks ago. So It's a Tide ad. I'm sure everybody has seen the It's a Tide ad. This is a couple years ago. I like to talk about this example because, first of all, it did win the Super Bowl. That was definitely, by far that year, the best ad. But they took a very complex portfolio, and they actually had the brand managers have to kind of, take the ego out. Tide obviously was leading, but Mr. Clean had some good moments, and they really weaved in all of the products to tell this full story. And it was really, really effective. And as a brand, if you have a complex portfolio, this gives you really, really kind of inspiration to tell the story holistically. Super powerful. It garnered like 3.6 billion views, impressions beyond just the commercial that they paid for. That was all earned. And then they got they got press coverage, and their sales uplifted by 35%. So, kind of sit with that. That is a phenomenal number for a piece of content that was just really effective storytelling. I really think I should go over there. I'm gonna go. I'm dancing over there. Minute to Fix It is a good example. So IT infrastructures inherently, one of the biggest issues is that you have deterioration of performance, but you don't know where it is. And vRealize actually gives you that ability to find where that problem is before it actually becomes a significant problem. But performance degradation is so boring. It's hard to really talk about and get people excited. But an online game fits for the audience because they're big gamers. They do not like marketing to. You kind of have to go, wolf in sheep's clothing when you're marketing to a sysadmin. So basically, this is a really effective way to tell the story, get people to understand the product really quickly, and it had significant gameplay and return visits and click through to the site. So this is a way to tell a story. It's just different. The this is brilliant if you really think about it. So there's the year in search. It comes out every year. It's being worked on right now. It basically takes all of the things that we've searched over the course of the year, and it pulls it in and it tells the story about all of the most searched topics, and it creates all sorts of content. It has a site, it has video, and what ends up happening is everybody goes to Google to search for the year in search. Just sit with that for a second. That is absolutely brilliant. I love that. One of the things about in-home is, from in-home marketing perspective, is that you've already told the story. A lot of people have already seen the film. And so when you think about a film like Cruella, it was hugely popular. And so you really had to think about the themes and how are you going to tell the story differently. So in this case, 12-inch chocolate dolls got sent to creators and press, and it told the story of how Cruella was this amazing fashion designer, and it pulled out some of the favorite costumes. It also earned a lot of additional media because people shared, and it got covered. And then we had to put some dogs in, right? I mean, because dogs are part of the film, as well as who doesn't want to see Manny the Frenchie work a sewing machine? I mean, it was really one of the most popular assets. And then also working with other fashion designers like the Project Runway and Designer Daddy to create these sort of inspired looks. And then if you're like, okay, well, fashion, makeup, all of that, the best people to show makeup and really a design is drag. And it was super popular with the drag audience. And so having a drag queen versus just a makeup influencer was a much more effective way to tell the story and inspire people. So every beer company is making seltzer now, right? And so Miller Genuine Draft kept getting the question, when are you gonna make seltzer? They are a true, tried and true beer company. And I saw the CMO and the agency had talk about this case study. And I was like, it is fascinating. It is also such a great example of storytelling. They basically said, we're gonna launch seltzer. And they did this whole thing about how they're launching a seltzer brand, and everybody thought that they were launching a seltzer brand. But what they really were doing is they were taking the competitor's seltzer and they were putting it onto a rocket, and they did this full live event, and they shot the rocket. Well, they didn't really shoot the rocket because that would have cost a lot of money, and there's a lot of stipulations and regulations against that. And so the rocket falls over. The video is hysterical. So the video in itself, is part, and the live event garnered a lot of eyeballs. But then at the end they said, we're never gonna make seltzer, guys. We are a beer company. And so everybody started sharing on social that how Miller was a beer company and their favorite beer company. Sales shot through the roof. I mean, that's also brilliant. They kind of just made fun. They're like, okay, we're gonna give you a launch, but it's not quite as you expected it. Refinery 29, this is a great example. They do 29 rooms. It's been something that has been, kind of going. This is a great example of pulling in brands and doing brand partnerships. It also is immersive, and it brings that consumer in. Each room has the benefit of really having that it's branded and it's a brand partnership. So both Refinery 29 and that consumer experiences it, and they learn about whatever that brand wanted you to feel. And it garners so much additional earned media that it's one of those great examples because it's brand partnerships and it's in person and it has a lot of extensions that you really pull through from a digital and social perspective to really have that cohesive storyline. So Nike did a couple of years ago, they did Breaking 2, and they basically went out and they tried to find the best marathon runners, and they ended up selecting one final runner. And he basically, over the course of a year, had performance coaches. They had all of this new technology from a Nike product perspective, and he just went through. And then there was a documentary with National Geographic, and they did a world premiere. They did all of these great extensions, and that was all fine and good. And that told a great story, and it really showed how Nike can help you even as an amateur athlete. But people kept piling on. So Kevin Hart's like, okay, I'm going to do my own Breaking 2, and he basically is like, I'm going to all of a sudden I'm going to forget. It's a football player. He basically said, I'm going to beat his time. And he ended up beating it by 33 minutes, Tiki Barber. And so that was part of it was all of this trash talk between the two of them. And he ended up beating his time. And so the real one, and I have a video to show, which is probably why this is not working.
No human is limited. It's not about the legs.
It's about the heart and the mind.
With a strong heart.
And a focused mind.
You can do it.
adjusting, and this is my breaking too.
I gotta tell you, every time I watch that, it chokes me up. And now he's actually got a sponsorship with Nike because he was so inspired by the original story that he told his own story, and Nike wants him to keep telling it. And how powerful is that? And how much like love do you feel for Nike right now? Because that was just, they put him in the spotlight and they supported him, and just such a phenomenal kind of end to the presentation. I'm very close. So basically, Lee Clow, he did 1984 for Apple. One of the geniuses, creative geniuses that we all wish that we had ideas like him. One of the best storytellers ever. He basically says that if it goes onto a PowerPoint slide, it should not be in your ad. But you can translate that to anything. It shouldn't be in your video. It shouldn't be in your content, all of that. And so that is, I'm sorry for all the technical issues. Hopefully everybody was able to hear me by the end, and I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much.